Hi everyone, it's Jerry. The 2014 World Rapid Chess Championship held in United Arab Emirates, Dubai, from June 16th through the 18th consisted of 15 total rounds, 5 rounds per day, with the Swiss-style format tournament, which meant that players throughout the tournament were paired up according to how well they were performing. And so those later round games usually will consist of the stronger players, the strongest players, being paired up with one another. The rapid time controls refer to 15 minutes with a 10-second increment, and this year's winner was Magnus Carlsen. He finished clear first by half a point. He had 11 out of 15 with 8 wins, 1 loss, and 6 draws. This video will cover round 1. At the end of this video, I'll have a video annotation link to round 2, or you could check out in the description links to all other 14 games that he played. So let's see exactly what it took to become Rapid Champion. One additional feature that I'll include for all 15 games, I just put it up on the right-hand side. I have a Stockfish engine running on the right-hand side, so you can see exactly how the evaluation shifts as I play through the moves. I will essentially just be reviewing each of these 15 games and pointing out some interesting moments throughout. So let's just hop right to it. This is the first round game. Carlsen had white opening with d4. We see a Queen's Gambit declined, and eventually we have the Tartakower variation with b6, and this will usually turn into a hanging pawn structure. We do in fact see that. After c takes d, e takes d, eventually we have c5 and a couple more captures coming up soon. Takes, and then takes again, so that's exactly what we are working with. The rooks will be well placed on the C and D files, so that's why we see the rook scooting over to C1, making way for the other rook. Knight D7, Queen A3. Here comes the other rook, Queen to B6, with some flight square for the king. And after A5, Knight E1, this knight's looking to reposition to D3 to put pressure on C5, or even F4 to put pressure on D5. Rook on A to C8. One common move that you could see many times in this variation is Queen to B4, welcoming this exchange because it would bring the rook right to life. However, this would be not a good move at this point. Queen B4 can be met with Bishop F3. Now this pawn is hit twice, and it's also in a pin. Moving it, well, you can't rely upon the queen as a defender anymore. So, in other words, after Queen B4, Bishop F3, what do you do about this pawn? If takes, you could defend this pawn, but you're dropping C5. So, in other words, Queen B4 would, as a result, be losing material after Bishop F3. So we don't have that. Rook A to C8. Queen B3, offering an exchange, we do have that. And those pawns look very ugly, but are they accessible? In the meantime, the idea behind it is to now pinpoint A5. This is a newly opened file, the A file. So G6, the king's ready to bump up a little bit. Rook A1, Rook A8, the knight gets working. And eventually these rooks are now going to double on the A file. And some break with C4, series of captures coming up. And just a minor piece endgame alone, stripped down even further, bishop endgame alone. This pawn is what you would call overextended. He's going to be scooped up in short order. So bishop A4, and white is up. Carlsen is up now, a pawn in this endgame, but his king is not yet working. So that's the next phase, get the king working. We have first G3. And then B3, don't want to give that pawn up so easily, of course. The king is finally inching up there. And now this pawn gets rolling. A slight wall is being formed here, stopping the king from even getting in a position to put pressure on the B pawn. And now comes f4. After g takes, we don't have the immediate recapture, but rather bishop takes h3. And then what follows was f5. Now what would happen if maybe just the immediate recapture? Well, what could follow is h4, and then it may seem difficult to make progress with the king. How do you dislodge the black king position? Well, here's one approach that you could take. You could simply push the pawn. He could be tracked down, but as soon as the king moves, this white king starts to get into a better position. This pawn is immune from capture since the king and pawn endgame is going to be 1. So we wouldn't have that. And if, let's say, after king c3 you don't take on b5, what if you just sit? Well, this pawn could still just be pushed. The king could take, but now finally the white king could enter and scoop up the kingside pawn on f4, maybe even this one here. This should also be good enough for white to convert to a win. But we didn't have that. After this capture, it wasn't the immediate recapture, but instead bishop takes h3, f5, king e5, b5. This pawn is immune. Cannot track this pawn down after this. It's not fast enough. Can't get inside the box. So instead, bishop g2, b6, king position, bishop e4, cute little move to see. If bishop takes, f6, king takes pawn, you grab the bishop. He cannot be caught. And what more? If bishop takes here, well, the bishop can't stop both pawns, right? He's still going to be pushing through. So instead, bishop c8, f6, king takes pawn, and now it may be tempting to just want to push right through with b7, but a little bit of patience. There's no rush. This bishop is restricted. Let's keep him restricted. He's not going to go anywhere. Instead, let's get a better king position. That's what we have, king f4. And then after h5, now we push with b7. If we just go back one step here, if you instead play b7, this is still going to be a win, but maybe it's a little bit more tricky since your king's not as well placed, being on e3. If you can get him to f4, why not do that? Well, that's what we had in the game. First, make sure you get the king to a stronger position, only then play b7. And soon enough, this game is simply over. Bishop c6, and black resigns. What could have followed after king h6 was bishop e8. And then what? You push the pawn, he's dropping, and, well, you're going to lose material no matter what. These pawns are going to be scooped right up. But as it happened in this game, after bishop c6, black ended up resigning. So Carlsen won his first round game, and so that's pretty much it for this video. And feel free to check out the annotation link at the end of this video for round 2 of this tournament, or check in the video's description for links to the 14 other games.